There we are. So recording has started. Recording has started again. So we just had a little break, with a bit of technical problems. Power went out here with lightning as well behind. Okay, so essentially what we're saying the bill is procedurally flawed because the home education section not based on research. And you can explain that the minister admits to the Portfolio Committee on Basic Education that they don't have research, and this socioeconomic impact assessment guidelines require that research be done, which it hasn't been done. The bill is also procedurally flawed because the socioeconomic impact assessment was not published with the bill in 2017 or in 2021. And if you didn't see that socioeconomic impact assessment or you haven't seen it, then explain the fact that you haven't seen it and that you've then been denied an opportunity to fully comment on the bill because of it. You could also object to the definition on home education. And there's some suggestions there about what you could do. You can ask that full-time education away from the home be allowed under parental supervision, as well as full-time tutoring at home. Some objections you could make, objections to the definition of a competent assessor. A term was added to professional body in the field of education because of the pressure that the homeschoolers were putting on, but that hasn't actually been defined. So you could ask for that to now be clearly defined. Also talk about the cost implications. And then if you have and I think there's a lot of people who share this concern about assessment. So if you have an educational objection to assessment, explain why you believe assessments would be bad for your children. You could also talk about the lack of choice of a program. One important one, if you want to, is that clause 35, subsection 6. It says if the department doesn't respond to your application for registration within 60 days, you'll be deemed registered. But that respond is a bit vague because what it could allow the department to do is just say, hi, thank you for your application. We're looking at it. And then you're back in limbo again while they're looking at it. So it's important to ask that could be substituted with either approve or decline the application. So within 60 days, they must tell you whether you're registered or not. That's really the idea behind that. And then I think everyone knows about this subsection 16, where the minister has now wants the power to make regulations. And there's a number of things that you could ask about that. And you could then, and there's a number of, we could perhaps see how we link those two. So let me quickly, because time is moving on, let me quickly ask you then, is anyone want to use any of these? Anything that you want clarified about any of them, if you're going to use them? If you don't have them in front of you and you're a Pestalozzi Trust member, you will have had this sent to you in your email recently, I think just earlier today. So perhaps get it out from there. But let me just, if you've got any questions on any of these, if you want to ask anything about it, please do so now. We've got the sort of full team here. So you can you don't have to have my view. You can get the view of a whole lot of other people. So what is the current definition of home education in the bill? Clause 1. Anyone want to answer that? Boa, maybe? Foreign?
The current definition is merely that the education must be provided at home. So it's a geographical definition. That is changing in the BELA Bill, but I don't have that in front of me.
Okay, let me just, I can whip it up if we need to.
Now, I've also got it in front of me now.
Brilliant, Karen.
So that's the BELA Bill definition, or are you looking for the SASA definition?
If you have either or both, that would be great.
Okay. The BELA Bill definition, home education, means a purposeful program of education for a learner alternative to school attendance, which, and there are A, B, and C. A is provided under the direction of the learner's parent, primarily in the environment of the learner's home. B may include tutorial or other educational support if necessary, secured by the parent on specific areas of the curriculum followed by the learner. And C meets the requirements for home education contemplated in Section 51 of this Act. So that's the clause 35, which will become the new Section 51.
Okay, great. And so the issues there, so if you perhaps want to raise it, as you can raise it in a number of ways. You could raise it in a general way, or you could raise it relative to your family and link it to your experiences. So if, for example, and a number of people who are in this situation, but if you're particularly concerned about this, if you use, for example, and there's and when I said a number of people in this situation where their own home, for a variety of reasons, is not the best place for the homeschooling to take place. So they may be going to a friend's home, they may be going to a family home, maybe going to the grandparents, maybe going to a library, maybe going to a community center. There's a lot of people in South Africa who's, and sometimes I've got quite a few kids, I feel this way. We don't all have spacious homes or spacious houses, as the EFF had it in one of the election posters, where they were calling for spacious houses for all. In many ways, the BELA Bill is predicated on this kind of notion that they're kind of looking at a very traditional nuclear family. So you could raise that issue there. This issue of being provided by the parent, if you use tutors, I think it's important that this limitation on the use of tutors is not there. So that's something to tackle. That's another aspect that you can tackle in the definition. So the way you could use that is you could explain your experience with tutors and why you use tutors. And perhaps there are people who use tutors full-time. Why maybe you need a full-time tutor. Often when you're dealing with learners with special educational needs, the parent is there having an oversight role, but they do need the tutor to do the education. And the BELA Bill, with the way that it interprets home education at the moment, is not keen or does not really allow the full-time tutor. So we want to make that explicit. We want to make that and we want to make it very clear that you can have full-time tutors. So that's how you could use that in the context of making your submission. There are some other questions that are perhaps not directly related to kind of making a submission. So what we'll do is we'll just switch off the recording and then we can answer those. We'll answer those at the end once we've switched off the recording. So I'm not going to go to those now. Any other questions about how you could relate some of these topics? Because time is marching on. So let me get ready onto the next section. Okay, so and if you have anything that comes up, we'll go there at the end. But so I'm going to assume that there's nothing else, and that you're ready to move on. If anyone's not ready to move on, just give me a thumbs up. Once again, a bit weird, but give me a thumbs up if you're not ready to move on. And I'll give you a few minutes, give everyone a few seconds to just catch up if they are writing. Or copying and pasting furiously. Okay, Uda, you raised your hand. You're not giving me a thumbs up, so you obviously want to say something. So let me hand over the floor to you.
I just want to mention at this stage, I missed a little bit at the beginning, so I don't know if there is anyone who is rehashing an old submission. But even in writing, some of the issues that we've been fighting very hard has either changed a bit or has been removed. So it's important just to take note of them. And the two issues really that kind of stuck in people's minds is annual assessment. So it's not annual anymore, it's now per phase. So if you refer anywhere to annual submissions, just know that's not in the bill anymore, it's now per phase. And then the other thing is home visits has been removed. So they can now do a pre-consultation home visit, but they cannot, they can do a pre-consultation, they can do a pre-registration consultation. Sorry, long day. Pre-registration consultation with the parent and the learner. And that is maybe something that you could want to comment on, that they want to do the consultation with the learner as well. But the visit itself has been removed. So the consultation can be over the phone, it can be at the Wimpy down the street, it can be in a park, whatever. So, and I just wanted to raise those two things. So if you speak about that, either in your current submission or you are rehashing an old one, just make sure you take those things out.
Thanks, Uda, and that's a great reminder. Thank you. Yeah, I'll go through what those are just the top of my head, and then what we'll also do is we'll most probably just do a little note as well that we'll put out just as a reminder if you are using one. So the things that have changed right from the very beginning are the following. People may remember that there was this big alarm when they wanted to make the penalty 6 years. So don't write that the penalty is 6 years. The penalty is now 12 months. So it's gone down from 6 years to 12 months. That's the penalty in section 3. I think it's clause 2, section 3, the penalty for, so that's gone down. So just remember to change that. And one of the reasons it went down, I'm convinced, was all of the people who objected to it. Then another thing that has changed is registration is now, there's one registration, you register once, not per phase, you register once. You register for a phase, but you register once, and then you notify the department of your intention to continue homeschooling. That's another one. That's another big one that's changed. It has then mentioned the fact that, yes, thankfully, and I was there when it actually happened. Thankfully, we saw home visits die their final death. So home visits are out of the bill. It's now a pre-registration consultation. That's another one. So just make sure that you don't sort of complain about home visits because that's out. And then I've actually forgot the last one that you mentioned, Uda, but I'm sure everyone else remembers it. Okay, let's move on. I don't know if there's any further questions about that. So let me say now, after we've had a bit of a discussion, if you want to just give us a thumbs up if we can't move on. Okay, I'm going to move on then. And so there were those specific, so sorry, I'm going to zoot around a bit, but here were these very specific ones, specific issues that you could raise. And then we get to the general issues, the sort of issues that you could argue, we could call them maybe, let's call it the philosophical or the broad principled issues that people are concerned about. So you can do so you can speak about clause 35 allows the provincial education department to set aside the decision of parents by giving power to HODs to decline applications for home education. And you can explain that education officials will not be able to understand all the factors that have to be taken into account in choosing home education. This is, I think, this is the fundamental concern that many people have with the bill. And then, of course, the second issue is unlawfully restricts the right to education because it only covers skills and content comparable to the national curriculum. So this is what we could call the freedom of curriculum and assessment that's also many homeschoolers are calling for. And in this case, if if you want to go this route, if you're going this route, and I'll say a little bit about that. If you're going this route, you therefore say, I support the Pestalozzi Trust proposal. Please find the proposal attached below. So this is also just a way of saving you some time. If you want to go this route, you can save some time by just referring to the Pestalozzi proposal. And the more people that support the Pestalozzi proposal, in a sense, the more serious it's going to have to be taken. There is a recording about what the details of the proposal are. I'm not going to go into it now. But I just want to stress the point that we just went this route because it was thought this would be a good route, an easy route to go, following down this, and because it's quite a short one. This is for people who are sort of pressed for time. But please feel free to follow your own. You don't have to use this route. You can go down the other route, which is also in the which is also equally in the Pestalozzi templates. The Stop the Bill. There are a lot of people who are of that view. They've got very passionate convictions about that, and I think I can speak on behalf of the trust when I say the trust is not the trust. All the trust is doing is trying to give people options in order to empower them to do what they want to do in these circumstances. It's not prescribing to you. It's not asking you. It's not begging you to go down any of these routes. And the only reason we went down this route tonight is because we're trying to do this in a very quick time, and because we're essentially pressed for time, which is what this kind of easy submission is about. And let me say that whichever one you put in, it's going to have value. So if you're saying stop the bill, it's going to have value. If you're saying adopt this, which I think is a very creative solution, this Pestalozzi solution, or it's called the Pestalozzi Trust proposal, just for want of a better word, also going to have great value. But no one should feel pressured to go either of those routes. Go the route that you're happy with, that expresses your deeply held personal convictions. So any questions about that as we sort of get ready to wrap up? Feel free to just put your hand up or put something in the chat if you've got a question. I hope that's clear. If no one has any questions, anyone not ready to move on to the very last?
Sorry, Christopher, just one last thing that I want to mention, maybe, while we are dealing with this, is that be sure you use the correct clause number, because the clause number has changed over the various versions. I can't actually remember if it was what it was in 2017, but I know at some stage it was 35 and then it moved to 37, now it's 35 again. So we are now at 35, so just make sure you refer to it as 35.
Something else to remember is if you want to attach this, your submission to a letter, it depends on how you're going to do your submission. But if you do that, please remember to change the heading, the title of that document, so that it doesn't contain template. So it doesn't say NCOP submission template. Put in NCOP submission, and then you can put in your own name and the date maybe. But it shouldn't contain the word template.
Thanks, Karen. And what I could suggest maybe is just before, let's do it as we're going through this here. So first, proofread your letter. You can check for typos and missing words. Make sure you've added everything you wanted to say. Remove all the red and blue words. But then what you could do is, why don't you do a word search for template, and then you can check, and then it'll check your document to see the template doesn't appear in the document. And also, of course, just check your how you've saved the document as well, if you're attaching a letter as Karen suggests. Okay, and then you would be ready to send your letter, open a new email in your mailing program. You can copy and paste, so please make sure you get the right address, available@parliament.gov.za. One of the things to do is, I think since about last Thursday, Parliament has been sending back confirmations of receipt. So make sure you get a confirmation of receipt. Copy and paste this address into the BCC field, the blind copy field, homeschoolfreedom@gmail.com. That allows the Pestalozzi Trust to keep track that your submission did go in. The trust often is in contact with the portfolio, or in this case, the select committee. So if there's any issues, the trust can raise those issues on your behalf with your submission going in. Also give your letter the appropriate subject line, such as re-comment on the basic education, but on the basic education laws amendment bill. You can just say BELA Bill, comment on the BELA Bill, they'll understand it. But just check that because of the old headings rule, always check your headings. Copy your submission into the body of the letter, and then you can send it. And let me just endorse this final sentiment. Everyone who's sent anything in, whether you're sending in a page or you're sending in 20 pages, thank you very much for standing up for the rights and freedoms of our children, of freedom of education in South Africa. And I know that this can sometimes be like a little bit like bashing your head against a brick wall. A lot of people are quite disappointed that they did a lot of work to submit at the national back in 2017. They did work to submit in on the policy in 2017, and they did a lot of work to submit middle of last year. People went to the public hearings. But let me say that from lots of experience in the world of politics, the battle goes to those who are persistent. So, and I can say, and I can really say this with my hand on the Bible, that even though it may not look like there are cracks being caused by your contributions, from behind the scenes and my interactions in Parliament, I can tell you there certainly are issues constantly being raised because of what you're doing. It's just not always that obvious in kind of the public or the external public sort of forums. And sometimes, even if it doesn't win the battle this round, it lays the ground for the next battle. So thank you very, very much for everyone who's going to this effort. Any last questions or thoughts that anyone would like to share? I think actually what I'll do is I'm going to stop the recording, and then we can... Uda, before we stop the recording, I'll let you speak.
Thank you, Christopher. I wanted to comment on the email address. So some of you may be on the group or on some BELA Bill groups or on other BELA Bill groups. And there was some discussion today about, so when the notice that there was an extension to the deadline was published by Parliament, they said that comments, I think they said comments or inquiries. I'll just check the exact wording, but it could be addressed to a different email address. So there was some discussion. It just says any person or organization wishing to submit written comments is at liberty to direct the submissions, and then they give a different email address. So there was a bit of a, okay, now we need to send it to a different email address, etc., etc. We are trying to confirm whether they did in fact change to the email address, but I think it would be very unusual because the email address given is someone's personal email address. So that person won't be able to work for the next month if they suddenly receive 5,000 emails in their inbox. So I suspect it may be a mistake, but if you were worried about that, we are going to confirm whether they did change the email address. So just keep an eye on the activist groups or the Pestalozzi Trust members group, and if we hear something, we will let you know. But as far as I'm concerned, the BELA Bill, you will be safe sending into the BELA Bill address tool.
Well, thanks, Uda. Always from you, always hot off the press, the latest accurate information and twists and turns. Okay, thank you very much, everyone. I'm going to stop the recording now. So let me say thanks to everyone that's attended. As I said, if you need more details on the pest lottery proposal, there was a session on that. There is a recording on that and information on that. Please feel free to contact the trust if you have any questions. And as I said, just a reminder, there is the extension now. So please encourage everyone. Let's get as many submissions in as possible. And yeah, and let me, yeah, and as we see, keep up the good work. This is a bit of like the water dropping on the stone. We've got lots of drops in order to kind of finally wear a hole through the stone. So don't lose courage and keep going. I did see there was one question. Do we do both our own sorry, let me just go through these quickly. Do we do both our own submission as well as we state adopt the trust proposal at the bottom? Yeah, you can absolutely do that. You can, if you've got, I think that the idea is that just make sure that your own submission is not at odds to let's say in this case, the trust proposal. So, if you want to, so yeah, I think just as long as they kind of more or less agree, then go. Then there's nothing wrong. You don't have to put the trust proposal in. You can just put your own submission in. That's great. But yeah, I think that hopefully answers that. And yeah, and thank you for all of those who are saying thanks. We appreciate your efforts. Okay, let me then stop the recording.